The old canine's nails tapped softly against the concrete floor. Each step echoed through the narrow jail corridor, a rhythm of memory and muscle, worn by years of service and silence. He walked beside two uniformed deputies, his leash hanging loose, in one of their hands. They weren't holding him tightly. They didn't need to. The dog moved with calm obedience, his grey-muzzled head held low, eyes scanning but unreadable. Scars lined his snout like old war maps, silent testimonies of service no inmate would ever know. His name was Valor, retired, decorated, forgotten. Today, he was visiting the prison for what the guards called therapy walks, a way to calm inmates, bring warmth to cold halls. They didn't know Valor didn't do therapy. He was a detection dog, trained to find what others hide. He didn't belong here. But today something else was about to happen. As they turned down D block, one of the guards gave a polite nod to the surveillance camera. The prisoners behind the glass-fronted cells looked up with tired eyes, some smirking, others indifferent. To them it was just a dog, old, stiff-legged, harmless. Then Valor stopped. Mid-stride, frozen, his ears pricked. His head turned sharply to the right. Cell 14, a bald inmate inside gave a lazy wave, leaning on the back wall, his tattoos crawling up his neck like vines. The inmate smiled, but Valor didn't move. He stared, unblinking. The guard tugged gently. On the leash. Come on, boy. But Valor's muscles tensed. In a flash, he lunged, not at the cell, at the guard beside him, snarling, fangs exposed. He slammed the deputy into the opposite wall with terrifying speed for a dog his age. The leash snapped from the handler's grip. Chaos erupted. "Inmate on the loose," someone shouted. "No, it's the dog. The dog's attacking." Blood hit the floor. The guard screamed, not just in pain, but confusion. Valor wasn't biting to maim. He was biting to drag, to pull him down. Other officers rushed in. Valor released the first guard and sprang toward another, Deputy Markson, sinking his jaws into the man's wrist. Not a killing bite, but firm, tactical. The man fell. Valor didn't let go. Alarms. Flared. "Cell doors slammed shut. Get the damn dog off him," someone yelled. "Sedate him." A CO raised a stun gun, but didn't fire. Another hesitated with a baton. A lieutenant came running from the admin wing. Stand down, that's Valor." He knew the dog. Everyone did. His picture still hung in the lobby with his late handler, Officer Clayton Rourke. They hadn't seen Valor like this in years. Breathless, Markson groaned on the floor, clutching his bitten arm. Blood stained his sleeve, but his eyes darted wide with something else, something raw. Fear. Not of the dog, of what had just happened. He looked straight at cell 14. The bald inmate inside. Gone. The cell was empty. Doors weren't supposed to open. On this block, not without clearance, not unless— "Check the control panel," the lieutenant barked. Officers scrambled, lights flickered. Red alarms kept spinning. Valor finally released Markson's arm and stood guard between him and the corridor, his body trembling, growling low. Not wild, controlled, focused. A soldier in a firefight. Get a medic. Was the cell open? How the hell— No one had answers. Only Valor. His chest heaved as he turned toward the control room glass window, behind which a lone technician stood frozen, hands still near a console switch. Pale. Shaking. He hadn't seen the dog coming. Or maybe he had. Behind him, the live feed from cell 14 flickered. Security rewind showed something no one could explain. At 10:41:32 a.m., the inmate in cell 14 walked to the door. At 10:41:34 a.m., the door unlatched. No one had touched a key. No override was logged. No emergency. Code had been entered, and then he vanished. The bald man gone, and Valor had attacked before it happened. In the warden's office, 2 floors above, silence hovered thick like smoke. Valor now lay on the cold floor, chained gently, not harshly, beside the lieutenant's desk. No muzzle. He wasn't resisting. His breathing was slow again, eyes calm, but he watched the door. Every second. Deputy Markson was in the infirmary. His bite was clean, non-lethal. He'd refused to speak since it happened. The lieutenant stood beside the warden watching the footage again. "I don't get it," he whispered. "It's like the dog knew." The warden, an older man with eyes that had seen too much, leaned forward. "He wasn't attacking us," he murmured. "He was protecting someone or stopping something." A long beat passed. Then, "Wasn't that the same block where Rourke used to work undercover?" the warden asked softly. The lieutenant didn't answer. Valor blinked slowly, the greying fur above his eyes twitching. In the reflection of the window, he saw something no one else saw, his partner's shadow, and the truth that hadn't died with him, the one still buried inside these walls. Something was happening, something that started long before Valor retired, and wasn't finished yet. And Valor, as the old limping, loyal canine, had just drawn the first line in the dirt. Something was wrong in that prison, and he had just made the world listen, even if it meant being branded a danger, even if it meant shedding blood. Because when they took Rourke from him, something never sat right, and today Valor had finally smelled it. The same scent, the same lie. And this time, he wouldn't let it get away. Before the walls, before the chains, before the chaos of Cell 14, there was only the field, the wind, and the voice. That voice, Valor, heal. Clayton Rourke's voice had never been loud. It didn't need to be. Calm, commanding, warm. When he spoke, the world around Valor fell silent. Not because it was forced, but because it trusted him. Valor had been just 2 years old when he first met Rourke. An eager, lean German shepherd with much energy and nowhere to put it. Unadoptable, they'd said. Too aggressive. Too smart for his own good. Rourke saw something else, not a problem. A partner. They trained under the desert sun, sweat and fur soaked in purpose. Days blurred into weeks. Bomb drills, drug trails, attack signals, night patrols. Valor learned to wait, to listen, to trust. But the real bond didn't form during the drills. It formed in the silences. When Rourke would sit on the tailgate of the cruiser at the end of a long shift and stroke behind Valor's ears, whispering things no one else ever heard. "My dad died in a prison just like this one. They said heart failure, but I know better." Valor would lay his head on Rourke's lap, eyes half closed, as if guarding that secret with his soul. There were other nights, too. The night they found the missing girl in the woods, and Valor didn't. Sleep for 2 days. The night Rourke took a bullet during a gang bust and bled out onto Valor's fur. The night Valor refused to leave his hospital bedside, even when ordered. After that, they were more than a team. They were each other's only. Truth? 3 years before the prison attack, they'd started working in correctional ops, a special undercover assignment. Infiltration, intelligence, corruption leaks inside the state's most secure penitentiary, Red Rock Correctional. Most cops wouldn't dream of stepping into that job. Rourke volunteered. "They won't trust me," he had said, "but they'll trust a dog." Valor was fitted with a modified collar cam and trained to patrol inmate blocks under cover of therapy. But he wasn't looking for signs of anxiety. He was tracking movement, watching patterns, sniffing out betrayal. Rourke posed as a correctional assistant, a cover that gave him access to records, corridors, staff files. Quietly, they logged every odd shift swap, every disappearing inmate file, every cell that opened too easily, every bruise that went unreported. Something was off in Red Rock, and they were getting close, too close. The last night they worked together. Rourke knelt beside Valor in the parking lot and tied a red cloth around his collar. It wasn't regulation, but it meant something. "You wear this if something happens," he whispered, "so they know who you are." It happened less than 24 hours later, a riot in C Block, unplanned, or so they said. Rourke was found crushed beneath a collapsed steel gate. Blunt force trauma, closed case, but Valor knew. He'd sniffed the blood, smelled the fear, and he knew gates don't collapse that cleanly. They'd silenced Rourke, and Valor, shaken, growling, still wearing that red cloth, was retired. Too aggressive now, they claimed, too unstable for service. In the years that followed, Valor was passed between handlers, mostly quiet, mostly obedient. But something inside him had shut down, as if the only voice that ever made sense was gone, and the world had gone static. No one could reach him. Until Lieutenant Reyes. She wasn't a dog person, not really. But when she saw Valor at the retirement compound, standing alone by the fence, watching the horizon like he was still waiting for orders, something pulled at her. She took him in, not for therapy duty, not for patrol, just to see if he'd look alive again. At first he didn't respond. Then one night a storm rolled in, thunder cracked overhead, and Valor began to pace, not in fear, but in readiness. He walked to the front door of the house, sat down, stared at it, as if expecting someone to walk in. That night Reyes found the dusty old storage bag tied to his crate. Inside, Rourke's training log, worn down to torn pages and faded ink, and the red cloth. It wasn't just a bond. It was a legacy. Back in the prison infirmary, Deputy Markson still refused to speak. He kept replaying the attack over and over, eyes hollow, mind somewhere far away. Valor hadn't gone for the kill, he'd gone for the secret, for the thing Markson was trying to keep inside. Reyes entered the medical bay quietly. She wasn't there, in uniform. She came as a handler, not an officer. She didn't speak. She just walked over to Valor, who sat at her feet with eyes steady, ears still tilted toward the door as if he knew something no one else did. She gently ran her hand along his back, felt the muscles still tense. "You weren't wrong, were you?" she whispered. His tail didn't wag, but he pressed into her hand. A silent yes. She turned to Markson. "You want to tell me what's going on in D Block?" He didn't answer, but he didn't look away from Valor either. He was sweating now, fingers twitching. "Rourke," she said gently. "You knew him, didn't you?" Silence. Then he got too close. The words came out like ash. Reyes's eyes narrowed. "Close to what?" Markson swallowed hard, voice shaking. I didn't mean for it to happen. A crashing noise cut through the infirmary. A metal tray hit the floor near the door. A nurse stood frozen. Not by the noise, by the sight. The monitor above Markson's bed, the old medical cam feed. It flickered once, then showed an image from 3 years ago. Security archive footage. Rourke, standing alone in the control room of Red Rock, typing something, looking back, as if he knew he was being watched. Then static and gone. Reyes turned to Valor. Where did this footage come from? But Valor was already moving, toward the hallway, toward the truth that hadn't stayed buried. Something had been triggered. Something had been waiting. And Valor was back on duty. Valor didn't run. He walked. Each step down the concrete corridor was deliberate, calculated. Not one wasted. Reyes followed in silence, heart thudding with every echoing tap of his nails. She had never seen a dog move like that, like he remembered every shadow, every scent, every breath. But Valor wasn't just walking, he was returning to the last place he'd seen Clayton Rourke alive. Block D. 3 years earlier, Rourke had entered Cell 14 alone. It wasn't protocol. It wasn't scheduled, but he'd found something that made him break routine, and whatever it was, it died with him that night, or so they thought. The guard posted at D Block stood up straighter as they approached. He wasn't one. Of the old crew, young, fresh, he gave Reyes a tight nod. "Ma'am, this block's closed for the night." But Valor didn't stop. He brushed past the guard's leg with force, making the man stagger. His nose hovered low, tail raised, body alert like a soldier back on foreign soil. Reyes held up her badge without looking at the guard. "Open it." The man hesitated. "I was told—" Now. A pause. A buzz. The gate opened. D Block had been inactive for years. Structural problems, they'd claimed. But it wasn't the walls that were crumbling. It was the truth, and Valor remembered. He walked past empty cells, eyes sweeping over doors like scanning a crime scene frozen in time. Then he stopped. Cell 14's, no hesitation, he growled low, not from anger, recognition, the kind of sound a dog makes when they smell memory. Reyes approached, keycard trembling in her hand. She tapped the lock. Click. The door creaked inward. The cell looked like any other. Cot, toilet, dust. But Valor didn't look at any of that. He stared at the wall, not at it, into it. He sniffed, then pawed the bottom edge. His claws scraped something. Loose? Reyes crouched. A panel. Small, subtle. A maintenance cover. She pried it open. Inside, an old recording device. Hardwired. Buried. Forgotten. She pulled it out with gloved fingers. The device blinked red. Still functional. She stared at it. Who put this here? Valor turned his head toward the hallway. Then they heard it. The sound of footsteps. Fast. Heavy. Someone else was coming. Reyes grabbed the device and tucked it into her vest. She turned, but the hallway was empty. Empty. Except for the soft creak of a side door swinging shut. Stay, she whispered to Valor. He didn't. He bolted toward the sound, Reyes close behind him. They turned the corner just in time to catch a figure vanishing through a fire exit. Valor gave chase. No hesitation. No command needed. The chase led them down a maintenance tunnel, dark, narrow, lit only by flickering ceiling lights. Reyes sprinted, heart pounding, barely able to keep up. Ahead, she saw the figure stumble, a shadowy blur. Inmate uniform? Civilian? Staff? She couldn't tell. Then Valor lunged, not for the throat, not for the legs, for the hand, the one holding a keycard. He clamped down just long enough to make the man scream and drop it. Reyes caught up and slammed the figure against the wall. Who are you? The man's face twisted in pain, but she recognized him. It wasn't an inmate. It was Guard Captain Wes Corbin, one of the only officers on duty the night Rourke died, and the one who filed the report that closed the case. Reyes backed off, stunned. Why are you running, Corbin? He didn't answer. He looked at Valor, and Valor growled again, deep, guttural, primal. Corbin's hands trembled. You shouldn't be here, he whispered. That dog. He shouldn't be back. Reyes didn't blink. What did you do? In cell 14, Corbin's eyes darted. And then he did something strange. He laughed, not loud, but broken. You really think this was about a riot? Reyes felt the blood drain from her face. She knew. He wasn't just guilty. He was scared. Tell. Me, she said. But Corbin shook his head and whispered, You'll never prove it. Later that night, back at the precinct, Reyes sat alone in the surveillance lab. The recorder from cell 14 was connected to a monitor. She hit play. The screen flickered. A static-filled clip began. Rourke sat on the cot in cell 14. Not alone. Across. From him sat an inmate, face partially obscured. They spoke in hushed tones. Then Rourke said something clearly. I know you've been moving them. Transferring the dead under fake names. Who's helping you? The inmate leaned forward. You won't live long enough to tell. Rourke smiled. You haven't met my partner. Then the video glitched. The lights flickered. And the last frame froze Rourke standing, hand near his badge, ready. Then darkness. Reyes stared at the screen, and for the first time she understood what Valor had known all along. Rourke wasn't killed in a riot. He was executed for what he uncovered, and Valor had been trying to finish what he started. But the betrayal wasn't just in the cover-up. It was deeper, inside the department. Inside the ranks. Reyes knew what would happen if she brought this forward. They'd bury it, they'd silence her like they did to him. She looked down at Valor, curled at her feet, breathing steady. Then her hand reached for her badge. Slowly she removed it from her belt, laid it on the table and whispered, Not like this. Not through the system that betrayed one of their own. This would have to be done differently. Off the books, just like Rourke started it. The next morning, Reyes stood outside the prison gates, Valor by her side. They didn't wear uniforms. They didn't need to. They were soldiers again, partners back in enemy territory. But this time they weren't alone. This time, the prison would talk, and the silence would finally end. Reyes didn't sleep that night, not because of the video, not even because of Corbin's words, but because of the silence from her own superiors. She'd sent an encrypted copy of the footage to Internal Affairs before dawn. By noon her inbox was empty. No reply, no confirmation, Not even a receipt of message read. That was their answer. She sat in her apartment, Valor lying by the door. He hadn't left her side since the incident, and he was watching her now. Eyes alert, ears twitching at every sound outside. Reyes whispered, "They're not coming, are they?" Valor didn't move. He didn't have to. She already knew. If there was going to be justice, it wouldn't be handed down from above. At 2:14 p.m., her phone buzzed. A single message. No. Name, no number. Just 2 words, check basement. She didn't hesitate. She and Valor were out the door in under a minute. The old precinct, the one abandoned after the department's restructuring, still stood like a ghost at the edge of the city. No lights, no patrols, just layers of dust. And a lock that didn't need a key if you kicked hard enough. She did. The door splintered open. Valor stepped inside first. Nose low, muscles tight. They moved together, silent through the darkness until they reached the basement stairwell. Reyes paused at the top step. The smell hit her first. Mildew, metal, something faintly chemical. She descended slowly, flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. Valor stopped, midway, and growled. A door at the bottom stood ajar. Behind it, faint flickering light. They entered. A small room, bare walls, a folding table, and on it, a box. Inside, files. Dozens. Some yellowed with age, some fresh. And under those, a list, typed. Names, each with 2 columns. Date of death and transfer code. Prisoner names she recognized. Names from the same year Rourke was killed. Names marked as deceased during unrelated incidents, riots, infections, suicides. But the transfer code column told another story. These men were moved. Not to other prisons, to private facilities, places. That didn't show up on any public roster, and every transfer had the same authorization signature at the bottom, Wes Corbin. Reyes gripped the paper tight, her hand shaking. This wasn't a cover-up. It was trafficking, hidden under the guise of prison violence and inmate relocation, and Rourke, he had discovered it too late. But Valor he knew from the beginning. Footsteps above. Heavy. Fast. She grabbed the files, stuffed them into her backpack, and clicked off the flashlight. "Go," she whispered. Valor sprinted first, silent. A shadow, in motion. They reached the side door of the basement just as the main one flew open, shouts behind them, flashlights cutting through the dark. She didn't stop running until they reached the alley behind the building. She didn't stop even then. Back, in the car. She slammed the door shut and locked it. Panting, hands on the wheel, her phone buzzed again. New message. If you don't stop, you'll end up like him. She stared at the screen, then turned to Valor. You hear that? He looked up at her, unblinking. Let them come. She drove to the only person left who hadn't sold their soul, Lieutenant Henry Falk, a retired officer. Once Rourke's partner, now a shell of the man he used to be. Shuffled off quietly after the riot. He answered the door slowly. Didn't speak, just looked at her, then at Valor, and his eyes filled. You brought him back, she handed him the files. I brought him back for a reason. Falk read in silence. No reaction. No comment. Just a quiet exhale at the end. I always knew they didn't riot, he muttered. Clay said he was getting close, said something smelled off in D block. Then he... Falk's voice cracked. They told me to shut up, or I'd be next. You stayed silent, Reyes said. I was scared. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The room said enough. An old man, a bottle of scotch, and pictures of dead friends on every wall. Silence had been its own prison. Falk sat up straighter. There's more. Reyes tilted her head. Falk stood, hobbled to a drawer, pulled out a flash drive. This, Clay mailed it to me. Said to use it only if he disappeared. I never opened it. I didn't want to know. Reyes took it. Back at her car, she plugged it into her laptop. Video. Clayton Rourke's voice filled the car. If you're watching this, I didn't make it. I've traced a series of falsified inmate deaths that line up with private contractor payments. I believe someone inside is helping move high-threat prisoners off record for profit. And I believe Captain Corbin is the point man. If you want proof, check the surveillance port in cell 14. It's not on the official grid. I had it installed. And myself, that cell was always off. A pause then. If anything happens to me, I don't trust internal, don't go through the brass. Take it outside. Go to Reyes. She'll know what to do. Reyes froze. Her name. He had trusted her. Long before she knew any of this. She looked down. Valor was watching the screen, and when Rourke's voice ended, the dog lifted his head and let out a low, aching whine, like he'd heard the voice of a ghost. By morning, Reyes was already at the gates of the press office, a USB in one hand, the list in another. The truth wasn't going to die in a basement. Not again, but someone was waiting for her. 2 black SUVs parked across the street, unmarked. Government? Private? Didn't he matter. What mattered was that when she stepped forward, the men inside didn't get out. They just watched. And Valor? He stood between them and her. A retired K9'd tail still to ears raised. Waiting. Reyes turned to him. We're not done yet. She handed the flash drive to a courier, gave him one instruction. If I don't check in by noon, release it to every outlet on this list. The man nodded, ran, and Reyes. She walked straight toward the SUVs because the truth didn't wait for permission, and Valor followed her. Into the lion's den. The interrogation room smelled like copper. Not blood, not yet, but the kind of metallic scent that clung to sterile gloves and hollow threats. Reyes sat alone, wrists chained to the cold metal table. The light above her flickered, pulsing like a weak heartbeat. No clock on the wall, no mirror she could glare into, just silence, like a coffin waiting to close, and somewhere beyond the steel door, Valor. They'd taken him the moment she entered, not with force, but with a command, a whistle from the man in the grey suit, the one who hadn't spoken a single word, but made every decision in the room. Valor had resisted, snarled once, but then looked back at Reyes and walked away. She hadn't seen him since. Her fingers ached in the cuffs, but it wasn't the pain that made her want to scream. It was the uncertainty. Was the courier intercepted? Was the file deleted? Was she going to vanish like Rourke? And worse, would Valor vanish too? The door opened. Corbin walked in. No uniform, just a black shirt, rolled sleeves, and the same grin he wore at the funeral all those years ago. The one. That said, I know what you know, and it doesn't matter. Officer Reyes, he said, like tasting the words. She didn't respond. He sat across from her, dropped a file on the table. I read your little exposé, very creative. Still no answer. He tapped the file. You want to know the real difference between heroes and ghosts? Silence. He leaned closer. Ghosts can't testify. Reyes didn't flinch. Not until he stood and opened the door again and brought in Valor. The dog walked in slow, cautious. Muzzle strapped tight, collar replaced with a steel-linked restraint. But his eyes, those amber eyes, burned. He wasn't afraid. He was waiting. Corbin smirked. Still loyal, huh? Makes you wonder if dogs know they're backing the wrong side. He turned to Reyes. Give me the drive, or I put him down. That word, down. It hit her like a bullet to the chest. Reyes's voice cracked. He doesn't deserve this, Corbin chuckled. No, but neither did the dozen guards who died in that riot. Sacrifices. That's what all this is. Sacrifices for order. He walked to Valor, placed a hand on his head, mock affection, and knelt. But you don't care about order. You care about stories, about martyrs, about heroes. He leaned into the dog's ear. Tell me, Valor, do you still dream of Rourke? The dog didn't move, didn't growl, didn't snap. He just stared. And then something changed. His ear twitched, nose lifted, and his body tensed, a vibration in the floor, footsteps, fast, approaching. Corbin turned, confused. What? The door slammed open, Falk don't old, limping, but there. Holding up a tablet with the paused video footage, the footage from Cell 14, the private camera, Rourke's murder, broadcasted. On screen, Corbin's face paled. What did you do? Falk grunted. Sent it everywhere, every precinct, every journalist you forgot to pay off. Reyes couldn't hold back the smile. It wasn't over. It was beginning. Corbin lunged, but Valor was faster. The second the leash dropped, the dog exploded. Into motion. steel muzzle shattered against the corner of the table as Valor twisted and thrashed. In one terrifying leap, he was on Corbin. Time slowed. Reyes screamed his name, but not in fear. In warning, because guards were already pouring in. Guns. Raised, voices shouting. Corbin went down, then screaming, as Valor pinned him. Jaws around his arm, tearing into the very man who tried to erase everything, but then... Bang, the first shot hit Valor's side. He didn't stop. Bang, the second hit his leg. Still, he held on. Blood soaked the floor. Corbin was sobbing now, begging. But not for mercy. He was begging Valor to stop remembering. Reyes wrenched herself free from the cuffs, a trick Falk must have planned, and threw herself forward, shielding the dog. "Stop! You shoot again and you'll be the ones behind this table next." The guards hesitated. No orders now, no leader to direct them, just chaos. And in that chaos, truth. Minutes later, sirens wailed outside. Not prison sirens, not internal alarms. Media. Fan's civilian law enforcement. The cavalry she never thought would come. Corbin was unconscious, dragged out on a stretcher. And Valor? He lay motionless in her lap, still breathing, but fading fast. She whispered into his ear, tears streaking her face. "You did it. You brought him justice." His tail moved once, just once. A soft wag, the last of his strength. And he closed his eyes. The medics loaded him into an emergency van. One of them turned to Reyes. "Are you family?" She looked down at her blood-soaked shirt. At the dog who had given everything, she nodded. Yes. And climbed in beside him. 3 weeks later, the courtroom was full, yet silent. No one dared speak. Not the press. Not the officials. Not the guards. Lining the back walls, they all watched one thing, a service dog bed draped in a dark blue police flag, empty, but next to it, a single leash, neatly coiled, and beside that, a German shepherd's collar, scratched from years of duty, its tag glinting in the light. Valor, badge. K9, 027 Reyes stood at the podium. She wore her dress blues, medals she never cared about, clinking softly with every breath. Behind her, Falk sat in his wheelchair, hat in his lap. A thin IV still trailed from his arm. He had refused the hospital just to be here, just to witness the verdict. The judge adjusted her glasses, voice slow and deliberate. In light of the evidence presented, and the testimonies, from over 40 whistleblowers within the corrections division, she paused. This court finds former Warden Marcus Corbin guilty on all counts, including obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit murder, and systemic abuse of power. There was no cheer, no applause. Only a single exhale, collective, relieved. Chapter was ending. But for Reyes it would never truly close. She stepped away from the podium and slowly knelt beside the empty bed, took the collar in her hand, ran her thumb over the worn engraving. "You were more than a partner," she whispered. "You were the only one who never stopped believing me." The judge, eyes misty, leaned forward and said something no one expected. This court also acknowledges the posthumous service of K9 Valor, whose actions directly led to the exposure of criminal activity within the state correction system. She nodded, and this court recommends a permanent memorial to be placed in his honor. That night, the prison gates didn't just open, they collapsed. By state order, the facility was shut down indefinitely. An independent task force swept through every inch, removing files, collecting names, rebuilding records that had been erased. Over the years, justice had begun, but not without a cost. The day they buried Valor, the cemetery overflowed. Cops, veterans, inmates who'd been wrongfully imprisoned, and children holding photos of dogs who'd saved their lives. Reyes didn't speak at the funeral. She couldn't, but when she placed Valor's collar onto the stone, she whispered the same phrase she'd told him every morning, before every mission, before every shift. "You go first. I'll be right behind." And she kept her word. She didn't return to the badge, didn't wear the uniform again. Instead, she opened a non-profit, Project Valor. A foundation for retired K9s. She used the payout from the whistleblower lawsuit to build kennels, fund surgeries and train handlers across the country. Falk helped manage it until his health gave out. He passed quietly 6 months later. His ashes were scattered beside Valor's grave. No speeches, no press, just a plaque beside the garden. Every war has ghosts. Some wear uniforms, some wear fur, but none deserve to be forgotten. 3 years later, a little girl in a wheelchair rolled into the training facility. Trauma victim. Hadn't spoken since the accident. Doctors called it selective mutism. She didn't smile, didn't laugh, until Reyes brought out a young shepherd from the back. Same eyes, same focus. Same bloodline. His name was Echo. He trotted up to the girl, placed his head gently in her lap, and waited. And then she giggled. The first sound in months. Reyes turned away, blinking hard. The sun hit Echo's fur just right. For a moment, just a flicker, she saw him, Valor, standing in the doorway, unmoving, proud, and then gone, like a shadow in daylight. She walked to the wall behind her office, the one no one touched. It was covered in collars, dozens, each with a nameplate, each with a story. But at the center, framed in glass, was Valor's, his tag still stained with a drop of dried blood. She ran her fingers down the case, didn't cry, didn't smile, just whispered, "Still on duty."